So settlement was in 48 hours. My bank guy who was approving my loan had gone on holidays, hadn't passed a file to anyone else, and I needed to come up with $2 million in 48 hours. Hi, I'm Andrew Wright, Principal of Professional Southport, and this is the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. I've built a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, delivering a seven-figure annual rental income, and led my real estate team through thousands of sale and lease transactions. In each episode, I share real deals and strategies that will help you find, fund, and operate profitable property deals. The aim of this show is to provide education and build a community of like-minded investors who can collaborate, share insights, and help each other in each other's journeys. You can make excuses or you can make money, but you can't do both. So come and join us.
Hello and welcome back to the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. Now today we're deep diving into the commercial BRRRR strategy, or the BRRRR strategy. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And a real deal where Andrew added roughly $1 million in value in about 12 months at Ellensborough Street, Ipswich. We'll cover the math, the mindset, the wins, and the face plants. And there are a few of them, I can tell you. I'm really looking forward to this one. Let's get into it. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
How you going, Adam?
I'm well.
You're looking well.
Thank you. Well, look, summer's hit. It's warm out there, isn't it?
It is warm.
So, all right, let's talk about the BRRRR strategy. Okay, what is it?
Yeah, look, the actual term itself was derived by an American property forum called Bigger Pockets. And effectively, it's so hard these days to save a 30% or 40% deposit to buy a commercial property. So the BRRRR strategy can be used in residential or commercial property, but the main theory behind it is if you can force appreciation in a property, you can revalue it once the project is finished, and you've got a deposit for the next property. And hypothetically, you can renovate and improve a property within 12 months, revalue it, and every year you can just keep buying another property.
Right, so it's about knowing what property sort of fits for that strategy.
Yep.
Going in, having the funds to be able to do those improvements, whatever they are, force that increase in value.
Absolutely, yeah.
Your equity's gone up. You use that to buy the next one.
That's right.
Okay, why might an Aussie... Now, I know today's story is going to bring out that, but so much more. But look, why might an Aussie investor prefer the BRRRR over flipping or waiting a decade?
Yeah, we could probably do a 1 hour session just on that. But as I mentioned before, it's just so hard for people to save up a cash deposit these days to buy a property. So if you can force appreciation over a 12-month period in a property and just redraw the deposit for the next one, it just increases the velocity of your cash. You can improve your returns quite substantially and accumulate multiple properties quicker, and you don't pay tax along the way because you're not triggering a taxable event by selling the property. So every time you see property developers building stuff and selling it, they're creating a taxable event, paying some tax and then moving on. Well, my preference is to hold the assets where possible, and forever and a day they're also compounding as you continue to buy more and more properties.
Sure. Okay, and today's story is going to be a perfect example of that. All right, so I know that, look, so much to delve into with this, so I want to sort of start at the start. You hadn't bought in 7 years prior to this deal, is that right?
That's right. So since the episode 2 property, I went through a marriage separation, and as everyone knows, that can be a little bit taxing on the finances. So for 7 years I didn't buy anything. I was just working on my business and doing what needed to be done. So I had a friend of mine who had a house on Sovereign Island where I lived, and he asked me to do an appraisal, and I clicked on RP data and come up with a valuation, and I was a bit surprised at how much prices had increased. So I just clicked on my own address and thought, oh, wow, I hadn't kept an eye on my local market because I don't actually sell in where I live. I sell in Southport. So
Sure.
it had gone up about $1 million in recent years, and I thought, well, maybe I can
there's
do
equity
something
there.
now. Yeah,
Yep.
so I've been working on my business, putting in the hard yards. Maybe I can get a loan, and after talking to my finance broker, he confirmed that I could qualify for a loan, and I thought, let's go shopping. And from that day forward, I decided to spend a lot of time and effort reviewing every single listing in Queensland that came up on Real Commercial and commercialrealestate.com.
Every single one.
listing. So I've now done that for 3 or 4 years. There's not one listing that's come up that I haven't looked at. And I've put in a lot of effort. The old philosophy is to find gold, you've got to dig through a lot of dirt.
Yep.
And I don't miss any. Yeah, I go through every single one.
Wow. So I think there's a lesson in that that it really pays to go through absolutely everything. And probably a good point to note there that this whole podcast, it's all going to be pretty much commercial, isn't it?
Mainly commercial. So
Yep.
this, for example, the BRRRR strategy is originated with residential property, just improving a residential property. But my preference is to do a commercial BRRRR.
You've applied it to commercial.
I've applied it to commercial because the rental returns are a lot higher, perhaps 3 times higher than the net returns from residential, and that allows you the cash flow to hold on to these assets and keep accumulating.
Okay, so you've looked at every single listing
for the
that's
last
come on
3 or
Real.
4 years, yeah.
Okay, so look, that's going to probably become a little bit of a theme that I'm going to ask you about in every episode. About what I won't ask you what you look for now, because we'll do that in each and every episode. But
Sure.
In this particular case, what led you to Ipswich? It's Ipswich we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I went to school there.
Ah, of course.
And leading up to this purchase, after my broker told me I qualify for a loan, I'd actually gone to a couple of auctions on the Gold Coast bidding on commercial buildings, and there'd be 10 other guys outbidding me, and the market was just too hot. So I started looking at other geographic areas, and Ipswich was only 1 hour away. I went to school there, had a love for the city, had a lot of mates there, and this one just came up, and it wasn't advertised as mortgagee in possession, but it just looked like something that ticked the boxes. I could see the school where I was a boarder, lived there for 5 years. I could see it from that site, so I decided to go to Ipswich and check it out.
Okay, so it was a little bit of emotion involved there in the early interest.
Yeah, not just emotion for the area, but I'd completely forgotten just how beautiful the city was, with all these really, really old character homes. Like if anyone drives through the main city of Ipswich, it's not like the Gold Coast or Brisbane. You've got all these really, really old buildings, and I'd forgotten just how beautiful they were, because we just don't see them on the Gold Coast.
No, sure. All right, so you've headed out there to check it out. What'd you find?
Well, the first thing I found out from the agent was that he wasn't allowed to advertise it as mortgagee in possession. Well, a lot of the times agents aren't allowed to advertise things as mortgagee in possession or go through all the details for legal reasons. But it was obviously a motivated sale. I went through and I knew that there was heaps of work to be done, but I just knew deep down that the property hadn't sold before. Because
was it one property or was it more than that?
It was 4 properties.
Yeah, talk me through that first. So we're talking more than one property.
Yeah, so that in itself maybe created a bit of an opportunity, because the price point was probably a bit higher than most people would want to have a punt on or could finance. So it was 4 adjoining properties, which made it an awesome development site. And whilst there was probably, if they were individually marketed, they probably all would have been snapped up pretty quickly. There just weren't as many buyers for the conglomerated site, if you like.
Right.
So I went in there and I knew there was a lot of work to be done, but that's what created the opportunity. When you can solve sort of problems or overcome challenges with sites and add value, that's where the opportunities are, and that's why I pursued it.
Sure. Okay, so you've got, it's not mortgagee in possession, but someone under a bit of stress.
It was mortgagee in possession.
It was.
Yes.
But he couldn't advertise it that way.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but you'd seen signs that you thought that was the case.
Yep.
It's 4 properties, 4 adjoining properties. What was there? What were they being used for at that particular time?
Okay, so there was 11 separate tenancies.
Oh, really? Okay.
From memory. So there was a car park leased to the Ipswich City Council, which was 3 to 5 West Street. Number 13, Ellenborough Street, had 3 separate. It was a retail shop with 3 separate tenancies, one of which was empty. Another one had a bookkeeper in there paying $5,000 a year rent, which was grossly under market rent, because he was doing some work for the owner,
Right.
and in exchange a barter
There was a
situation,
bit
he was
of
on a
contra
really cheap
going on.
rent.
Yep.
Number 15 had an empty 4-bedroom boarding house upstairs.
Empty.
It was empty. It was in pretty poor condition. There'd been, stuff go on up there. It was in pretty bad nick. Smashed windows, all boarded up, and needed a fair bit of work. On the ground floor, there was a hairdressing salon and another retail/office premises that a lawyer had leased.
Yep.
And they actually had moved out before settlement. Number 17, Ellenborough, had a very famous cafe at the front, Rafter and Rose Cafe, still there today, been there more than 10 years, a really, really good little, beautiful little cafe there, great atmosphere. And at the back was an old rusty shed that just couldn't be used. It was so deteriorated and rusty that it couldn't be used as is.
Okay.
So that was the existing
So
site.
a lot going on there. You arrive, you have a look.
Yep.
What's your thought? You obviously start to put together a bit of a plan in your mind of what you could do if you went ahead with a deal here, if you could get a deal.
Yeah, well,
what was the idea?
The immediate opportunity was obviously to increase the rent and add value just with the leasing. So there ended up being 4 empty retail properties there, and the shed was empty. So it was actually 5 empty tenancies out of 11.
Does that include the boarding?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the leases that were there, they were all apart from the Ipswich City Council that had a registered lease. All the other ones were on month-by-month leases because the mortgagee in possession wanted them to be month by month to sell it to someone who might want to knock down the thing and build. So
Right.
previously, there was actually a development approval for a 15-storey high-rise building with 160 units on that site. And when you're selling a development site, you don't want long leases because you can't knock down the buildings if someone's got a long lease. So that also triggered interest with me. I thought, well, wow, one day this could be a 15-storey high-rise building here if I reinvigor a previous development approval. And I just saw it. And right in the middle of the Ipswich CBD, I thought, how good is this? Like, it's just a wonderful opportunity long term.
We'll talk about the deal in a minute and all the ins and outs of that in itself. So, but you're interested, you're keen.
Yep.
We'll look at those numbers, but initially it's just going to be keep the tenants where they are, put them onto long-term leases and the right market rent.
Correct. Yeah. So
then look at the empty spaces and what you could do with those.
Correct.
Great.
Yeah. So like 3 of the tenancies, I was able to lease out straight away before settlement. So as a real estate agent, the first thing I did, we'll come back to the negotiations later, but as soon as I got it under contract, I'd taken some photos and I was advertising it for lease online, and I leased 3 of the empty tenancies before it even settled, which was immediately de-risked.
Why hadn't the previous owner?
Well, they didn't want to because they were hoping that a big developer would come and buy it and want to knock down the place and build a high rise. So they didn't want to rent it out. Okay.
So you'd already gotten three in of the 5. So
that's right. And I didn't I didn't have time to get a lawyer involved. They weren't proper registered leases. They were just commercial tenancy retail shop leases that, as an agent, I can do up to 3 years agreements.
And you look, here's a question I want to ask, because there'll be listeners out there who think, look, I'm not a real estate agent. I don't know how the rental market. How would I know that I could easily get 3 retail tenants quickly? Is that something that is just something you've got as a bonus, or is that something someone else can easily research and find out?
Everything's a team. So I don't need an agent on my side because that's my skill set. but someone else, you just need to have a good agent on your team that can do the same thing that I did. And other people might be a builder. Now, I'm not a builder and I couldn't go and do a lot of the renovations and things myself, but someone else might have that skill set.
Sure.
And that's their strategic advantage.
All right, let's talk the deal. How much did they want?
2.3 was what they were chasing, and
Okay.
apparently they'd previously had an offer for that and rejected it in the early stages, thinking it was worth more.
Right.
So I went in at 1.8. The bank or the mortgagee, it wasn't a bank, it was a private lender. The mortgagee came back, said they won't accept anything less than 2. And at the end of the day, we agreed on 1.95 million for the 4 properties.
Right. Was that a pretty easy negotiation?
It was over a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Typically, when you're buying something mortgagee in possession, if it's not under auction circumstances, it's very slow to get responses and can take 3 or 4 days for
Okay. So you settle on 1.95.
1.95, yeah.
All right. What were the terms?
They'd previously gone to auction and didn't sell it, probably because, again, no one could get finance on it because there's no long-term leases. Half the place is empty. And again, that's what sort of creates the opportunity sometimes is when people can't finance a property, there's less buyers, less competition, and you can usually go in and negotiate something. So they wanted a cash offer. They didn't want one subject to a long finance clause because the lender was already in default, not paying the interest. So,
okay. Had you been pre-approved?
I hadn't been pre-approved. No, I spoke to my broker, gave him all my financials. He said, "Oh yeah, should be right, mate." And I thought, yeah, I'm pretty confident that I can get finance for this thing. And I took a massive risk, and I just signed the contract without a finance clause because that's the only terms that they would accept. I did put a 14-day building and pest, and I tried for a 90-day settlement to give me more time to get all those empty tenancies rented, but they only would accept a 60-day settlement. So it was basically 14 days building and pest, 60-day settlement.
Had you gone and I suppose you can't do this until it's under contract to actually talk to the tenants who were already there when you first turned up to say, look, we're not doing month to month anymore?
No, I had talked to them.
You had done those discussions.
Yeah, so that's what gave me quite a bit of confidence. Is a couple of the tenants there had already spent. The cafe had been there for 10 years, and they'd spent a fair bit of money on the fit out in the place. The hairdresser had spent a bit of money making it a beautiful salon for hairdressing, and those tenants didn't want to move. The council had been there for 20 years paying rent, and that gave me some confidence going forward that there'd be the main tenants there were going to stay on, and it was just a matter of increasing the rent on the vacancies.
Right. Okay, so 60-day settlement.
Yep.
No finance, clause. You're pretty confident that that's all going to happen. Yep. So talk me through what takes place from there.
Yeah, my circumstances are fairly more complicated than average with lots of companies and trusts and things. So the finance process just took so much longer. You know, I would have thought, 30 days she'll be right, and I've got a 60-day settlement.
Yep.
But it just dragged on and on because of my circumstances, a bit more complicated. And coming up to the 60 days, my bank guy looking after my loan went on holidays. He just went on holidays.
So the mortgage broker set it up with the bank, but the bank guy goes on holiday.
The bank guy who was to approve my loan went on holidays for 2 weeks, didn't pass my file to another bank employee.
This was the guy who was stamping it to say.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but it was all, it looked good. It was going to happen.
Oh, yeah, Andrew should be, it's looking good. We'll get the final approvals out. And then all of a sudden he goes on holidays and...
who tells you this? Is it your mortgage broker on the phone
to you?
I'm
on the mortgage broker every 2 or 3 days saying, have I got approval yet? Have I got approval yet? And, I'm chasing him. All of a sudden he's on holidays. And this just kept going on for, to a point where the lawyer said, okay, well, we've got settlement coming up under the contract. You can extend for 5 business days. So I asked for that 5-day extension, and then the guy, I still didn't have the finance approval because no one else at the bank was looking after my application while he was away. And 48 hours to settlement, my bank saying, hey, you need to transfer money to my trust account here for settlement. I said, well, I don't have it. My bank guy's away. And the reality hit that I'd signed a contract without a finance clause. I was about to lose my $50,000 deposit.
Well, that's something we hadn't mentioned. There was a $50,000 deposit.
$50,000 deposit, and they could sue me for losses if they resold that property at a lower price.
So
And
you're up the creek
I'm
at this
in
point.
strife.
You've got to come up with essentially
I had no cash.
1.0.
I had no cash. I was borrowing against my house. I had no cash. I was in
You
strife.
needed 1.95 in 48 hours.
Plus stamp duty, $2 million. 2.2 million and 50. Because stamp duty was about $100,000.
Now that's the definition of stress, isn't it?
That's the definition of stress.
What'd you do?
Well, the first thing I did was I rang a couple of mates and said, "Hey, look, I'm in strife here. I got a good deal. I'm buying. I'm good for the money. Can you transfer me a couple of $1 million tomorrow? I need the money." And I exhausted a couple of those options. There was nothing really in it for them, even though I offered them sort of 10% interest and a bit of a bonus for it, but they just weren't in a position to help me out. So I rang the lawyer and said, "Look, how do we get out of this thing?" So we went through the contract and we found a clause which no longer exists in current REIQ contracts, but in 2022 there was a clause there that required the selling agent to provide a copy of all the written leases within 14 days of the date of contract. Now, he had given me those leases, but it was before I signed the contract. So a little loophole there.
Right.
We used
a
that.
timing thing.
A timing thing. So the agent was a good agent. He did nothing wrong. It was just a loophole under the contract. We had given me the leases, but the contract says he must provide a written copy within 14 days from this date, which the date of the contract.
Right.
And he'd given it to me before that date, but not the 4. So we got a loophole out of it. So I said, "Okay, I'll cancel the contract. I don't want to lose me $50,000. And what happened was we went to the sellers and we said, "Okay, look, can we extend for 14 days? Because we do want to go ahead with this purchase." And they said, "Oh, well, we're going to charge you an extra $50,000. We're going to make the selling price $2 million instead of 1.95. I said, "Well, I'm happy to pay you penalty interest for that extra couple of weeks." And just a money grab. "Oh, no, we've got you under the thumb here with this contract. You're going to lose your deposit. We're going to charge you an extra 50." And I said to my lawyer, "Okay, let's use that loophole. I'm not going to
be held over a barrel.
No, I'm not going to get pay that penalty." And we had an out clause. We wrote to them and said, "We're pulling out under the clause XYZ." And then they came back begging, saying, "Oh, look, Andrew, we want you to go ahead with this. We won't charge that extra $50,000." So we agreed on a 14-day extension.
Right. 14-day extension. You got the finance through.
We got the finance through, but another spanner in the works at the last moment. A week later, when I got the final finance approval, the initial approval came through. We're going to lend you 70% on this property. And then when the approval came through, "Oh, Andrew, here's your approval. We're going to lend you 60% LVR." Interest rates had just gone up. They'd done their servicing calculations, whatever the financiers do, and they wouldn't lend me the 70% anymore. They'd only lend me 60%, which means I needed an extra 10% deposit that week.
Oh, goodness.
Extra $195,000 I was short.
So where'd you get that from?
Yeah, I had to go to my share portfolio and sell up some shares straight away and get an extra 195 in a few days' time from selling some shares.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wowee. But deal done.
Deal done through, very stressful times.
I can imagine.
I got the deal done.
Wowee. All right. So deal's done. What's next? So you've got all the tenancies in. How many of the? So we've got 7.
There's 11 tenancies altogether.
Yep.
There was actually 4 retail tenancies empty and the shed, so 5 empty. So there's 6 tenants out of 11 there. 5 of them were empty.
Right, but you get them onto their new leases, all paying the right amount of rent.
Yep.
And
so I increased the rent on a few of them that were under market rent. The bookkeeper tried to bluff me, saying, "Oh, I'm going to move out if I don't want to pay this market rent. I'll help you out and do a bit of work on the side." I said, "Look, I don't need any help." So he said he would leave, but when he went out to the market to see, that our other offices with that sort of retail exposure would be a lot more expensive, he caved in and he just agreed to pay a fair market rent, and he stayed on. The other ones, the empty properties, 3 of them I signed on the new leases for 3 years.
Straight away.
Before settlement even happened.
Yep.
The tenancy upstairs, the old 4-bedroom boarding house, couldn't be rented as it was. It needed a lot of work.
Well, before we get to the empty ones, I did
Mm.
want to ask, what these new tenancies that you got in, plus the ones you now, how is that going in terms of repayments against the loan? How much have you got covered? What's your shortfall at this particular point?
Well, there's no shortfall yet because when I started negotiating those leases, that was before I'd even got to settlement. Like that was from day one. I had 2 months to sort those leases out, and I had 3 of them sorted out beforehand. But once I had the finance approved, the cash flow was reasonably neutral at that time.
So that was neutral at that point.
Yeah, it was
without.
That's right.
Wow.
Because I had the place mainly leased up except for the upstairs boarding house, the 4 bedrooms, and the old rusty shed at the back. It was
right.
all
it was, and
rented.
and you're almost neutral at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
pretty well
great
neutral.
starting point.
Absolutely.
Okay. What did you do with the 4-bedroom?
It was 4 bedrooms, but they didn't have ensuite. There was only 1 bathroom up there.
Right.
So in episode 2, we talked about my love for the rooming accommodation.
That's what I'm thinking here. Yeah.
They're all ensuited ones that I built
Yep,
there on the
yep.
Gold Coast, but this one in Ipswich, there were no bathrooms as ensuites. There was just 1 shared bathroom. So I did my due diligence on rents in the area, and for a little bedroom with no ensuite in that sort of condition, the market rent was about $130 a week. It was pretty low. So 4 of that was $520. I would have had to cover the electricity costs, the water costs, the extra insurance costs,
Sure.
common area cleaning, Wi-Fi,
Yep.
all that sort of stuff, and it wasn't really that appealing. So I didn't like the idea of having to try and build 4 ensuites in there and the delays and costs of that. So I ended up renting it out as an office. I replaced the flooring. I did a bit of repainting in there and fixed a few smashed windows with a glazier.
Yep.
I put in an air conditioner.
Yep.
And I had it rented out as an office for about the same rent, a slightly higher rent actually than the 4 individual rooms would have achieved, and a lot less management.
Yep.
So having a 4-bedroom boarding facility with regular cleaning and invoicing of 4 different tenants, 4 leases instead of 1, there's a lot more management involved. So
Yep.
the idea of having 1 tenant as an office, in this case, was better than instead of converting the office to residential like I
Yep.
did on the Gold Coast. This one was the opposite. I converted from resi to office.
Right.
Just made more sense.
Okay. And what was the cost to do that?
Oh, look, I think it was $6,000 or $7,000
Okay,
I
just-
spent there.
yep.
A couple of grand for the air conditioner and the windows and the flooring.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And now you're cash flow positive.
Absolutely, yeah. Cash flow
Okay.
positive, yeah.
That just leaves us with this shed.
Yeah, look, I was trying to go the lazy way out with the shed, and I actually advertised it online to see if someone would rent it out as it was. And I had
What, storage or?
Well, I had 3 martial arts gyms ring me saying that they were interested, but when they actually came and inspected it, they said, no, look, this is in such poor quality that we just don't want to take it on. So I had one offer to lease it at $5,000 a year as storage, but that doesn't even cover the rates and the land tax on the place. And I just thought, I've got to do something here. So I came back to the old rooming accommodation. I thought, okay, well, look, here's a big giant shed. It's right in the middle of Ipswich CBD. I've got experience with building a rooming accommodation facility. Let's go. I rang the town planner. Can we do it? Yes, we can. I got an architect and building designer to come up with a plan to build a 13-bedroom, 13-bathroom rooming accommodation facility. After getting the town planner involved, we worked out that there'd be a fair bit more compliance with building a building with that classification. Once it's more than 11 bedrooms, you've got to have fire sprinklers throughout the building instead of just smoke alarms and things like that. So we scaled that back to an 11-bedroom, 11-bathroom boarding house is what I was proposing.
Okay. So is that what eventually happened?
No. I part of my due diligence with the town planner was what's this going to cost me to build, and stage 1 of that was what the council was going to charge, and the charges, the town planner estimated, I think it was $14,500 in infrastructure charges, less whatever sort of credits we'd get for the existing property.
Sure.
And once we,
That's a lot in just red tape, isn't it?
well, that by itself, I was okay with that.
Yep.
Because that's the cost of doing business. But when we actually went in, I actually wanted to firm all that up. So we requested a pre-lodgement meeting with council, and I went in with the town planner, and we sat there, and the lady we spoke to there said, "Oh, well, hang on, Andrew, this is not one boarding house with one lot of infrastructure charges. This is 11 unrelated tenants living in a property. They're not sharing meals together. We're going to charge you 11 lots of infrastructure charges, 100 grand plus whatever
Oh,
the normal application fees are, etc. And by the way, because you can't prove that shed has been used in the recent years, we're probably not going to offer you a credit for the infrastructure charges already paid on the shed, because it hasn't been used in recent years. There's no existing use, so we're not going to give you any infrastructure credit." So I walked out of that. Walked out of that pre-lodgement meeting, looked at the town planner, and I said, "Look, this is one of the reasons why we have a housing problem in this country. I'm there trying to provide a solution for 11 people to have a place to live, and they're trying to, excuse the French, but they're trying to money gouge me
yeah.
for trying to help solve that problem." And I just said, "Look, I'm going to pay the council nothing. I'm just going to replace the shed, and I'm going to rent it out to one of those martial arts gyms that was interested if I fixed it up."
Sure.
And that's what I did. I went and just replaced the shed. I did have to get council approval to replace the shed because the building at 17 Ellenborough Street, it's not on the state heritage register, but it was listed as a place of national character with the local council, and
Right.
I needed their permission to make the changes.
Yep.
And they said, "Oh, look, because it's not the front cafe, it's actually just the old shed at the back. You can do whatever changes you want." So I got their permission. I went and got some quotes to replace the shed. They were about 100 grand apart. Very important to make sure you get
Really?
over 100 grand apart on the quotes just to replace the roof.
You got two?
I got three.
You got three?
But the highest to lowest was 100 grand difference on the quotes.
Okay. What were those quotes?
Oh, look, I can't remember. I think it ended up being, I think it was like 200 to 220 grand to replace the roof and all the cladding on the side of the building. So to completely replace the shed, I think it was 200 to 220. But there was one quote that was, 100 grand more than that.
Wow.
So I went and got that done, and during the process of contacting the martial arts gyms, another gym owner, a physical gym, weights and cardio gym, approached me, and they ended up signing up a 5-year lease with a 5-year option to rent the space.
Sure. Can you talk me through the numbers and due diligence you did on the rent versus the cost of improvement?
Yeah, look, the shed was about, I think it was over between 450 and 500 square metres a shed, 450 to 500 square metres of net lettable area in the
so
shed.
it's a decent size.
Yeah, so even at for a renovated place, I just did the numbers, and I knew that I could get 65 or 70 grand a year from the shed. So for an investment of 300 grand on the shed, there's 20% rental return there.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened. So I ended up just on the shed, probably cost me 300 grand to renovate it, and more than 20% rental return, plus, as we'll talk about shortly, the valuation uplift.
Well, that's what I want to talk about now. Let's pull this whole thing together. Talk me through the numbers. We want to look at the income lift, the valuation, the refinance, and just let's look at this total deal as a whole now.
Yep. Yeah. So look, part of the one of the R's in the BRRRR strategy is to revalue and refinance the property. So after 12 months, when I had all that done together, so I'd increase the rents from 120 grand a year to $272,000, so an extra 150 grand of rent.
Wow. Yep.
So I'd spent 350 in total, 300 on the shed and another 50 grand fixing up boarded windows and flooring and some of the other tenancies and things like that.
That upstairs office, yep.
And it revalued up $1 million after 1 year. So I spent $350 valuation. The literal valuation, it was 990,000 higher.
Right.
So call it $1 million.
Yep.
So 350 grand invested, but an uplift of $1 million in 1 year.
So we're now talking that it's worth about, it's valued at
2.95.
2.95.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. So the final R in the BRRRR strategy is repeat, and that's exactly what I did. So I bought it, I renovated it, I increased the rents because it was more attractive after renovation, increased the rents, I revalued it, I refinanced it, and I borrowed the deposit for the next property and repeated the process and bought 4 industrial sheds up at Harvey Bay shortly after, which we'll talk about in another podcast.
Wow. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Talk me through, let's just finish off here. What went wrong and what would you have changed in doing all this? Where are the lessons?
Yeah, some of them you can't change. Like I didn't have $2 million cash sitting around that could have avoided the issues I had with the bank. I mean, if you're far wealthier than me and you've got $2 million lying in the bank, well, that's great. You won't have the challenge that I had with the bank guy going on holidays and not getting my finance approved.
Well, I just want to ask you there. I mean, for a lot of people listening, the risk of you doing it with finance without a finance clause.
Yeah.
What's your, you're obviously willing to take that risk.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't advise it to anyone. No, so look, I wouldn't take that risk. I wouldn't recommend anyone take that risk. For me, I was prepared to. It was a $50,000 deposit. I've lost $1 million in 1 day with share market investments, and a 50 grand deposit to me, whilst it's still a lot of money, with my higher tolerance to risk, it was a risk that I was prepared to take. And to be quite honest, I thought the finance would be approved in 30 days. Mm-hmm. So allowing 60 days for settlement, I didn't actually understand the risk I was taking. I actually was blown away by how long it took to get my finance approved. I'll come back with the talking about the whole project. It wasn't just the BRRRR strategy that created the opportunity. It was the fact that no one else could get finance easily because the place was half empty. It was also in my ability as an agent to see the opportunities with the lease. So if we insert, Adam, the tenancy schedule there from the marketing agent, you'll see there that the Ipswich City Council rent was $15,307 a year. Now, I made the effort to go and read all the leases, and it was like a 50 or 60 page document. But what I saw in there was that figure is correct. It was in the lease, $15,307 a year to rent the car park. But the lease was dated 2001, 22 years ago. And if you go through the clauses there was another little clause there that said the rent will be indexed every year by the CPI Brisbane quarterly annual rate or whatever it was. So in reality, whilst everyone doing their due diligence on this property was looking at the $15,300 a year rent on the car park, the council was paying about 35 grand a year because it had been indexed for 20 years, and the lease also had provisions in another clause that the council had to pay 100% of the outgoings. So there was another $5,000 and something in rates that was also reimbursed. So other investors are looking at that opportunity, which was online for months. Anyone else could have bought it. It wasn't off market. So looking at a $15,300 income, it was actually over 40 grand income just for that one of the 4 sites. So that extra 25 grand a year income on at even a 6% cap rate, there's an extra 400,000 of value there that I picked up that other investors didn't see.
Just by looking further.
Because I made the effort to read the leases and understand the leases.
Yep.
And one of the opportunities when you do buy mortgage in possession is a lot of the times you can ask agents for information and they just simply, it's not their fault, they can't get it. They may well have asked the bank for further information on the income of a site, but the bank doesn't have it because they've just taken over possession from someone who's in trouble and they honestly just don't have the information. But if you understand leases, you can dig deeper there and create opportunities. The fact that there was not enough information, there was a problem for most people, but I made the effort to read the lease, to uncover perhaps, an extra $400,000 of value, an extra 25 grand a year of rental income
Before you'd even started.
no one else even knew was there.
Even there.
That's before I BRRRR'd it. That's just on the leases.
All right. What are the tips? What's the repeatable checklist for people to learn from this deal? So below market rents?
Obviously, the most obvious one is if you can see something that you think is below market value, but the rest of the market typically will make an assessment of what land values are, and quite often that's hard to find great opportunities below market value. But if you can find a commercial property that is under rented, it completely de-risks any investment you make, because at the very, very least you can find another tenant at that rent or higher. And if you can release vacant properties at a higher rent, the way commercial property is valued with a multiple of the rental income stream, you're just going to create an immediate uplift.
Okay. Any final words for our listeners before we wrap up what is an unbelievable deal that you've done here, and what it blows me away.
Educate yourself. I mean, I would have listened to perhaps 1,000 or more podcasts on property before I entered that transaction. So educate yourself. If you're not a real estate agent and you can go out and lease vacant properties quickly, get a real estate agent on your team that can provide that skill set. I'm not a builder. I had to find builders that could do the build part. So add some sort of advantage with your skill set to improve your returns. I also don't have to pay a property manager to manage the facility. I save 5% a year on the rents because I manage it myself, because that's my skill set. So find some way that you can add value and enhance your returns. That property now is probably worth closer to $4 million just a couple of years later, the way the markets have gone, and interest rates have come down during that time. And we've had, we're starting to see now cap rate compression, where the valuations are going to increase because the interest rates are coming down. So that asset now is high threes or $4 million. There's opportunities everywhere. But you've got to look for the problems. I'd been to a couple of auctions in the Gold Coast prior to that and got outbid by 5 or 6 people because the assets were stabilised. All the problems were dealt with. You've got to look for problems and add value to them.
And look deeper. Like you said, read the leases. Don't just look at the numbers on the surface. Go below the surface. Do a bit more than your average person.
Yeah, where can I add value? And down the track, there's a lot more value to be had there. One day, there probably will be a 15-story high-rise building on that empty car park. There's plenty more to go on that site.
Fantastic. Look, absolutely incredible story. I love it. And look, if you are in Ipswich, obviously you still own all these places.
Yeah, still own it.
Where people drive around Ipswich, give me the streets.
13 to 15 Ellenborough Street and 3 to 5 West Street.
Okay, and the businesses that are there, give them a plug.
Oh, Rafter and Rose Cafe, the best cafe in Ipswich without a doubt. Body Switch Gym, absolutely outstanding management there. Carolyn and the team do a fantastic job. Beautiful facility. We'll actually show a few photos, before and after photos, for the YouTube viewers to actually see how beautiful that Body Switch Gym is.
Great. So some fantastic tenants, but an even smarter landlord. Fantastic, Andrew. Look, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking through this deal with you. If you found this useful, if you've enjoyed this chat, please do give us a like, a share, give us a comment, but do hit that follow button so you can not miss an episode, because there's plenty more deals just like this one that we'll be going through, and even further down the line, Andrew will be bringing in some special guests with their property deals as well. So thanks so much for joining us, and look forward to talking to you on the next episode.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Andrew Wright Property Podcast. This is all about building a community of like-minded investors who can share real-life stories, experiences, and collaborate with a view to helping each other. Join us. Get in touch through the link in the show notes. I look forward to you joining me on the next episode.